I was lucky enough to see the first Candyman in the theater growing up. Bernard Rose's modern classic took the essentials of Clive Barker's short story and created a new icon. Seeing it in the theater, the film echoed through my bones with Tony Todd's resonant voice and that iconic score by Philip Glass. It made the film a surefire hit, birthing 2 sequels, and frightening a generation hungry for a new boogeyman to join the pantheon of Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, and Leatherface. While the sequels lessened the impact of the original film and proved the law of diminishing returns, the myth lived on. When word came out that Jordan Peele was producing and writing a new Candyman film, I was excited to see it. When the first preview dropped, I was stoked. Plus, it was finally being released on my birthday, so how cool was that? Well, I've finally seen it, and I have thoughts. Strap in, folks. This is going to be a long one. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Candyman is new in theaters from Universal Studios. It's directed by Nia DaCosta and written by Jordan Peele, Nia DaCosta, Win Rosenfeld, and based on a story by Clive Barker and Bernard Rose. That's something they left out of the credits. Desperately looking for inspiration, Anthony, Watchmen's Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, a struggling artist in the newly gentrified Cabrini Green area of Chicago, delves into the urban myth of the Candyman and finds that some myths are very, very real. The inspiration for his new art piece leads to the resurrection of the entity known as the Candyman and the murder of many. I'm quite familiar with the Cabrini Green area. I've driven past it for the last 20 years, seeing it morph from a dilapidated projects tenement to a place where the final residents held a standoff against those who wanted to knock the buildings down. It's a powerful story, knowing that half of the building was demolished and in rubble, while some residents stood firm and refused to move. Those holdouts were finally removed, and for the most part, the grounds has been replaced with parking lots and a Target superstore. The little church on the corner of the lot near Clybourne still stands as one of the final few monuments that anything called Cabrini Green ever existed. When I heard a Candyman film was being made, it felt like a gimme that it would be about gentrification. Turns out gentrification is but one of the mixed bag of social issues that producer-writer Jordan Peele and director Nia DaCosta decided to center on, or hover around. Unfortunately, they also wanted to center on struggling artists, the bougie Chicago art scene, bad police, inherent mental illness, and a cartload of other issues and themes, making Candyman filled to the rim and only buzzing around each of these themes erratically like the bees that hover around the titular character. Candyman is a slick-looking movie. It's a crisp and visually interesting film. Utilizing shadow puppetry for flashbacks is not only iconic, but visually delicious, as are the opening shots of the skyscrapers of Chicago, shot from the ground up, with the top floors disappearing into the foggy night sky. The lonely and ghost town feel of the remaining complexes that used to make up the Cabrini Green that Anthony roams through is unsettling, especially with the Chicago skyline decorating the background. The variety of mirrored surfaces in every scene that threatens to contain an image of the Candyman makes your eye dart across the screen with expectation. The scenes where Anthony is painting is transfixing, as he channels the horrors of the past through his paintbrush, and the final art pieces are quite terrifying to look at. And the final look of the Candyman is truly disturbing and grungier than the cleaned-up version that starred in the sequels of the original. Say what you will about the story, and I have a lot to say, don't worry about it, but this is a good-looking film. Nia DaCosta is the first black woman to direct a #1 film at the box office, and that's a wonderful accomplishment she should be proud of. I also think both Yahya Abdul-Mateen II and WandaVision's Teyonah Parris are great in the leads. They're exciting, funny at times, and able to carry the heavy emotional beats required. These 2 actors are talented, and I hope to see much more of them in future films. Though Parris's role is criminally underwritten, she still dazzles here, and Abdul-Mateen really balances the role of the unconfident artist, scared victim, and powerful spirit of vengeance impeccably. That said, the film's got issues, a lot of them, and most of them come from very simple storytelling mistakes that could have been rectified had Candyman not been so preoccupied with cramming so many issues into a single story. The original Candyman film was focused. It was about a white woman venturing into a mostly black neighborhood with noble intentions, but getting burned because of her ignorance. It was also a twisted love story between Helen, played by Virginia Madsen, and the Candyman, played by Tony Todd, who ends up seducing Helen into seeing the world from a different perspective, which literally blows up her worldview. There are probably a dozen other themes that can be wrung from the original Candyman film, but that's just a testament as to how good it is. Sure, Nightbreed and Hellraiser were groovy, but Candyman was the most sophisticated and successful adaptations of Clive Barker's works. Candyman 2021? Not so much. Simply from a bare-bones perspective, the film never really knows who it wants as a central character. For the most part, this is a story of how Anthony becomes the new embodiment of Candyman. For much of the film, we see the world from Anthony's perspective, and know that he's not insane, but being squished through a psychological ringer. But the film also stars Teyana Parrish, and as I said earlier, her role is criminally underwritten. Halfway through the film, after Anthony has already begun his crossover to the dark side, we get a dream sequence involving the father of Brianna, played by Paris. It's an unsettling one, but not just because of the detail it reveals about Brianna, but because up until that point of the film, it's all been from Anthony's point of view. It's at this point the film drops Anthony's inner turmoil almost completely, and instead we follow Brianna the rest of the way. While some films can get away with this, the challenge is that when you shift the point of view, that new shift has to be just as, or even more interesting as the previous point of view we were experiencing. And Brianna's story simply isn't. It could have been. There might have been some scenes on the cutting room floor, but what we got from Brianna is that she is an aspiring art dealer, and she is slowly getting more scared of Anthony. Meanwhile, Anthony is undergoing a horrifying metamorphosis into a living urban myth. That's more interesting by a long shot, and shifting away from that point of view is a big mistake. The problem is that there needs to be a protagonist and an antagonist. Instead of making this film about the internal struggle between Anthony and the Candyman myth that is trying to take over his body, the film just hands Anthony over to the Candyman and wants to make Brianna the stronger of the two. If they wanted that to feel natural, the film should have focused on Brianna the whole time, but it doesn't do that. Anthony also finds out about the Candyman in one of the weaker and more contrived sequences I've seen in ages. For no reason, out of the blue, at the beginning of the film, Brianna's brother, played by Nathan Stewart Jarrett, simply tells the Candyman story to Anthony and Brianna with no prompting after dinner. This is probably the laziest way to spark the interest in Anthony about the subject matter that I can think of, especially when there exists another character in the story, William, the laundromat man, played by Coleman Domingo, who had his own horrific experience with the Candyman as a kid and would have been a much better device to introduce Candyman to Anthony in a way that would have been more subtle and less clunky. Imagine if Anthony would have simply been roaming the streets of Chicago for inspiration and kept finding himself at the spot where Cabrini Green used to be. There he runs into William, who takes him through some of the ruins and tells him his story, leading him right into the belly of the beast. Much more haunting, much more interesting, much more of a way to hide that writer at that keyboard and simply have it feel like a natural part of the story. I'm going deep into Candyman because if I don't, there will be those who will say, "Of course you don't like this film. It's not made for you. You're a white dude." To those dismissives, all I have to say is, yeah, you're right. I am a white guy. But I'm also a guy who loved the shit out of the original, and I like the sequels too. I'm also a guy who appreciates a good scare, a good story, and a good movie. Candyman has a lot of interesting ideas, some cool looking scenes, and a few gnarly kills. There's also a few effective scares tossed in, but it is far, far, far from a good movie. Time to address the elephant in the room. Why are the black people of Cabrini Green so afraid of the Candyman when he only seems to kill white people? Peele and Co. even rewrite the mythos to allow a black person to say Candyman 5 times and have him kill all of the white people in the near vicinity and leave the black person unscathed. There's even a scene where a bunch of white girls and an Asian girl summon the Candyman in a bathroom of their school, and the Asian girl runs out scared and is spared from the ensuing white girl bloodbath that follows. Does this mean if you're a black person and say you're at a weekend concert and there are too many white kids around, you can summon Candyman to clear out the space and enjoy the show a little better? I'm trying to be funny about this in order to make a point. Peele once used humor to make biting social satire on all types of social issues, but he seems to have tossed that wry wit and simply gone for the cheers from the cheap seats with the bulk of the content he's released. By the end of the film, after bringing up the real problem of gentrification in the first half, an issue that affects a whole lot of folks, white, black, and otherwise in Chicago, that issue is offed like a white person in a Jordan Peele flick, and a whole dirty cop theme is tossed in for shits and giggles. Yes, the origins of Candyman has its roots in racism and wrongful persecution from authority. It's even mentioned briefly at the beginning, but the rest of the film is about gentrification. Sure, these themes are all racially muddled together, but still, you don't start talking about how hoods are cleansed for 90% of the film and then shove in a gore fest where the Candyman takes on a bunch of cops, most of which were just doing their job and responding to a distress call. Sure, it's a big body ending that'll rev up those simple-mindeds that think all cops are bad, but it definitely shoots all subtlety in both feet and both knees. See, gentrification is not a sexy topic. In order to make a lasting impression, you gotta go big and you gotta go sexy. So despite the fact that the script paints the crooked cops with a brush bigger than Lake Michigan and doesn't really allude to Anthony having issues with the police before, it's shoved in kind of like the Darth Vader sequence at the end of Rogue One. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it sure looks cool. Candyman hints on something deeper midway through as Anthony finds out Helen wasn't the murderous psycho urban myths would have you believe. Racial misconceptions is a concept breezed past when the original film is told in shadow puppet flashback, casting Helen Madsen as the murderer when she in fact was the victim, and the one who attempts to save the child from the flames in the end of the original movie. I wish Candyman would have followed that arc, discussing stereotypes and then challenging them. Instead, Candyman 2021 leans into the topic in a lazy and easy way that will most likely cause the crowd to roar, but doesn't make a whole lot of sense and really adds nothing but more division. While talented, Peele is steering towards M. Night Shyamalan territory, becoming a one-trick pony solely making racially themed horror films and shoving all of those issues into your face. Sure, race had a lot to do with the original Candyman, but it's not all it was about. There were rich characters interacting with one another, not cut-out symbols delivering over-sensationalized, polarizing, and obvious messages like the postman in Don't Be a Menace. The over-the-top ending landed like a turd in the theater I watched it in. It was mixed with all sorts of races and ages, by the way, and it might as well have the word message stamped over the last image for all the subtlety it contained. End of the review recap, since I know this was a long one, and if you made it to the end, congrats. The effects were good, the kills were okay, the scares were sparse but present. The acting was strong, the score was shit compared to the original, the themes were scattershot, the story pales in comparison with the original as well. What Candyman does successfully is that it opens doors for more films centering on the American Black experience in sequels, and with the success at the box office, I'm sure that'll happen. I just hope a better script is written that sticks with the themes and makes a better landing, because Candyman 2021 certainly doesn't. That'll be it for today. Please chime in down below in the comments and let me know how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. So guys, you know how YouTube works. I'd love to be able to dedicate more time to this channel. I'm not monetized yet, so if you want to help me out, remember to hit all the pertinent bells and whistles down below. Want some spooky comics to read? I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look out for. Both Gravetrancers and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, can be found in only the finest of comic book shops. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on my website, mlmillerwrites.com. If you really want to show your support, I also have a Patreon page at mlmiller. Look for the link to my Patreon page down below. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be. stuck inside.